Conversations with Azu Ishekwele.
Hello, and very warm compliments of the season. It's December, and instead of the usual price hike and very long queues, the price of fuel has come down. And if you ask me, I'll raise both hands and say thanks to Aliko Dangote. Some time ago, I overheard a neighbor's daughter ask her older sibling, quote, "What is the color of your problem?" End of quote. And I was greatly amused. The question fits very well into the endless confrontation between Nigeria's state-owned management and regulatory agencies in the oil industry. It is even more apt for the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, which between 2010 and now squandered an estimated 11.35 trillion naira, which is equivalent of $25 billion to service Nigeria's publicly owned refineries in Port Harcourt, Warri, Eleme, and Kaduna without any positive outcomes. But the entry of Dangote refinery into the equation has become a kind of sore thumb in that rather than cooperate with this private investor, the regulatory agencies see him as a competitor at best or even as an enemy, which is quite unfortunate. It is the outcome of these confrontations that led in the first instance to the replacement of Mele Kyari as the Group Chief Executive Officer of the NNPCL, and currently the resignation of the Chief Executive of the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, Ahmed Farouk, and that of the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, Benga Komolafe. But the fight is likely to continue, and we shall be here to bring more entries in our diary. Welcome to Conversation with Azu, our weekly diary on life and politics. Our column today is titled Ahmed's Fall, the Dangote Challenge, and a Rentier System. And as usual, Azu, the writer of the column, is here to take some questions. You're welcome to Conversation.
Thanks
Azu.
for having me once again, Julius, and compliments of the season.
All right. You see, countries protect their local enterprises and investments in very different ways. The attempt to clamp down on Dangote refinery by public agencies has been, that's my opinion, and I'll defend it, has been malicious and confounding. But the question is why?
That's an interesting question, because you recall that not too long ago, in fact, I think the vice president it was that described the Dangote refinery as a national asset. And indeed, that's how it should be looked at, especially because of the vitally important role that the production, that refinery coming on stream has come to mean for Nigeria's energy security. But, you know, some old habits die hard, as they say. And I believe that since 1976, when the first public refinery came on stream until now, that you know, a lot of people who have benefited from the corrupt system. It wasn't always like that, but over time, especially as the Port Harcourt refineries 1 and 2 collapsed, and the Warri refinery also became problematic, and the Kaduna refinery. And as you said in your intro, billions of naira was set aside for turnaround maintenance when nothing was actually done. So over time, over the years, as a result of decay and corruption, the public refineries have become the cesspits as to of corruption. So any attempt by anyone to try to do something differently, especially something that attacks or goes to the heart of the Rentier system, because this is actually, it's food, so to speak, for people who have ripped the system off through forex, through arbitrage, through forex, and also through patronage. You know, it's over time also become a very, very potent source of patronage. So there are many reasons why we are where we are. And I think it may be a bit too, maybe over optimistic to expect that the coming on stream of Dangote's refinery in less than 2 years will be enough to change the old habits which have become entrenched.
Late Wednesday evening, we were surprised by the news of the resignation of Ahmed Farouk from the NMDPRA. And we know that public officers don't just resign in Nigeria. So, and you're in a position to know, was he pushed or did he jump?
Or did he jump? Well, I don't know which one, but what whether it's broken or it's shattered, the impact obviously is the same. As I often say, whether you hit the nail on the head or you hit the head on the nail, the same impact. But I think it might be a bit simplistic in my view to overestimate what this means. Of course, it's important that the man accused of corruption and of sabotage has been forced or has resigned, whichever we choose to believe. But of course, it remains to be seen, and I do hope and pray that he's giving the chance to clear himself. His name and to defend himself. But I think, as I said earlier, it may be a bit too early to determine whether his exit, what his exit may actually mean. It could mean a pause, as I argued in my column, that the system is so the systemic corruption in the system is so deep that I am not sure that the exit of one person, whether by resignation or by removal, by whatever means, will be enough to bring the sort of root and branch changes that I think that industry and that sector deserve.
Opinions are very diverse, and is Dangote's fight altruistic? I mean,
obviously he's a businessman. I'm not.
Is this because of Nigeria, or is this because he's wondering? I mean, he's fighting over a $20 billion.
Well, no. Well, it's
investment.
I mean, it would be very naive to say that it's altruistic, but altruism and business are not necessarily mutually exclusive. I mean, yes, you can do your business if you are a businessman and you have invested $20 billion to get a refinery up and running. You are not just going to sit and fold your hands and watch, some folks just, But then also, as I said, the government has recognized that this is a vitally important national asset, and so there is, I think, a meeting point between private investment and also the national strategic security interest of the company, of the country. So I do not think that they are mutually exclusive, but that's also why regulators exist, and that's what we were hoping that the regulator will do. I mean that if there are boundaries that are being crossed by that's why you have regulatory system. But a regulatory system should be fair and transparent. That's the least that you expect. But a regulator who's behaving more like an antagonist than a regulator, or more like a commercial actor than a regulator, is bound to cause problems for the entire system, and that's exactly what we are faced with.
All right, for a little bit of what Azu has captured about this fight, just take a listen, and I quote, "It's a struggle for market share and ultimately for profit. A struggle for the world's biggest and most pervasive business. In this fight, the vested interests who have always hidden behind public bureaucracy for self-enrichment are suddenly aware that an independent player is changing the game, if not the rules." End of quote. Well, back to our question and answer session. Dangote didn't just issue a press statement or publish an advertorial. He came out guns a-blazing, to quote Donald Trump,
to quote President
and filed a petition with the ICPC. Have the vested interests in Nigeria's oil industry met their match in Dangote?
Well, I hope so, and I also hope that this is not reduced to a personal fight between Dangote and government, because I do not think that is what it is. As you said in your intro, and as I've said repeatedly in the course of this conversation, the Dangote refinery is a vitally important national security asset. So I do not see this as a fight between Dangote and government, or as a fight between Dangote and Farouk Ahmed, because Farouk Ahmed just represents a vested interest that has been so entrenched for a long time that it's finding it very inconvenient, that the change is taking place. But to reduce it, in my view, to just a fight between Dangote and anyone in particular, I think that would be missing the point. The important thing is we also do not want government inefficiency and corruption to be replaced by private monopoly. We don't also want that. And that's exactly why regulator exists. I think, and there is sufficient provisions in the Petroleum Industry Act to, within the framework of that act, be able to hold players accountable. And one of the first things I would expect that the regulators will do would be to find out exactly what happened to the $25 billion that had been used to fix the refineries. They told us that the refineries were working. Now, if the refineries were working, even at the most modest capacity, we will not have this fear and this anxiety about a potential monopoly emerging. And also, you need to find out or know the number of persons who have taken licenses to set up refineries. Why are they not setting up the refineries? All right. So it's not supposed to be a monopolistic Dangote affair. The field is still open for anyone who wants to go into the business according to the rules to do so. And I think that what the regulator ought to do is either to apply, and even within the Petroleum Industry Act, there's a framework that deals with regulation. I mean, at least in terms of pricing, so that one dominant individual does not capture the market. What I expected the regulator to do at this stage is to apply the law, and to apply the law in a fair and transparent manner, which I do not think has been the case.
One undesirable outcome of this exchange between Dangote and Ahmed Farouk was this question of public officers sending their children to foreign schools. Now that the allegations has led to Farouk's resignation, are there any lessons to be learned in regards to our management of public institutions in Nigeria?
Well, I read somewhere, a respected colleague said, well, this really ought not to be an audit of where public officers, which schools public officers send their children to. But I think it ought to be, in my view, an audit of the conduct of public officers in whom so much has been invested. And as I also argued in my column, only in July there was an attempt by the House of Representatives, and I think it's now stranded at the first reading, to insist that public officers must have a minimum level, acceptable level of conduct in terms of where their children school or what sort of hospitals that they go to. But I do not think that we'll be able to make any headway on that even at gunpoint. So I think that I will not jump the gun because I think it's also known that in many sectors in Nigeria, regulators earn something at a comparable level with the sectors that they supervise. So I will be surprised if, at least in terms of allowances and other perks of office, if somebody at the level of the CEO of such an important regulatory agency does not earn enough to send his children to some schools. I don't know about these particular elite schools that Dangote has mentioned. But I think fundamentally somebody at that level in a public office in Nigeria, such a vitally important regulatory agency, should earn enough to legitimately fend for himself and for his family.
All right. Finally, Nigeria had vibrant textile factories in Kano, in Kaduna, in Lagos, and all of them systematically collapsed because of the importation of cheap, low-quality textiles from abroad. And now, Nigeria has the best sweet refined crude, Brent crude is the best, gives you the best outcome in terms of refined products.
Yes.
So we now have regulators who are encouraging the importation of low-quality petroleum products. I mean, does it make sense?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It really doesn't make sense, especially as Dangote has also said And the regulators have not denied that the regulators themselves do not even have labs where they can test, because you remember there was a time that the regulators alleged that the sulfur content
of Dangote's
yes,
petrol
yes,
was
but
diesel was high.
Dangote pushed back to say no, that's not true. That I have a lab, I have a world-class lab, you don't even have. So that really is the situation. I mean, it's something that is really, really worrying. That we have a situation where what's the point you were making?
Importation.
Yes, that we have a situation where yes, but you see, it reminds me of Who Moved My Cheese. There's a book, Who Moved My Cheese. I mean, the world has changed since Nigeria was had the so-called pyramids of cocoa, of groundnut pyramids and all of those things. The world, cocoa pyramids and all of the world has changed since. The world has moved from where it was in terms of commodities to actually processing and value addition. And so no, I do not see many nations priding themselves these days on being major commodity owners or exporters, or being involved in production of primary of goods. We have to grow ourselves and grow our country and grow the economy to the point where we add value. And as long as you are adding value to whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's products that you are producing or services, then really there's no end to the possibility of what you can achieve as a country.
All right. For more on this, the full text is available on our website, azuishekwene.com. And if you haven't viewed the video of our last episode on Psalm After 5, please go to our site. It's very interesting, I promise you. And don't forget to leave your comments and leave us an email address so Azu could share his usually weekly interesting newsletter with you. And for our books, A Midlifer's Guide to Content Creation and Profit, just go to www.azu.media. Thanks for coming on the show, Azu.
Thanks for having me once again, Julius, and compliments.
Bye, and compliments of the season.
Conversations with Azu Ishekwene.